Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tips, brought to you by Hunt Seat Official. I'm Carter here with the one and only Kiefer Rogers,
What's
resident
going on?
archery coach, HLE team member, event crew
Jack of
coordinator,
all trades. At this
event crew
point,
tackle bot.
yeah.
Welcome to the podcast, man.
I appreciate you having me. Another Tuesday tips.
That's right. Another Tuesday Tips. Well, since you're here, Kiefer, we're talking archery.
As always.
We're talking bow hunting. Yeah. Particularly getting ready for archery season, getting ready for bow hunts that people have planned for this fall, myself included.
Yeah, what tags do you got? What are we gonna get you ready for?
You are going to help me get ready for my first archery elk hunt in Wyoming. I drew a general tag.
Hell yeah.
Going out there in September to hang out with old Gabe Martinez.
Is
And
Luke catching up with you on that one?
yeah, he drew the tag too. And he needs to be shooting his bow too, so I hope he listens to this as well.
Yeah, he said he's gonna come out here to the cabin and we're gonna break him down, build him back up, and get him going. So we worked a little bit. Like 2 weeks ago, he's like, I need to sight my bow in. I was like, let's work on form. Let's start there. We'll get this foundations going. So, but yeah, if we want to jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it, man. There's a lot that goes into it, and we're getting kind of close to crunch time, right? I mean, it's June.
Yeah, most of the tags at this point have dropped. I know I didn't draw anything here in Colorado, so secondary draw will be coming out shortly. They changed some things up this year, so we'll see if we pick anything up on that. Yeah, but I think Dan posted we're 75 days away. It's going to be here quick. So
this is like my first back home, and maybe you can relate being having some roots in Pennsylvania, but like people count down till rifle season here. But in Colorado, folks are counting down till archery elk season in September.
Yeah, anticipation around September 2nd here in Colorado is it's a big deal. I know it kicks off. Well, archery antelope starts on the 15th. I'm hoping to get out for that this year for a couple days, but honestly, September 2nd's that's the big one. That's the mecca. Seems like everybody in the country wants to go elk hunting right now, which leans good for guides and outfitters because we're staying busy. But yeah, you got to be prepared for that. And a lot of people overthink it on the gear side, and they try to drop ounces and do all these things to come out west. And I'm a big proponent of being able to shoot. If you can't make your shots, none of the other stuff matters. So yeah, just getting prepared on that side of the house and knowing your equipment, knowing everything, and yeah, feeling confident going into the season is the biggest deal. So
yeah, that's what I've been anxious about, right? Because like it took me 6 years to draw this tag, and it won't matter if I cannot shoot when I need to shoot at all, right? That's like kind of a lot of pressure.
It's yeah, I mean, and I see it, year after year guiding. Guys show up and they're, oh yeah, I'm good to 80 yards in the backyard, and I'm like, man, I shoot year round and I'm not taking an 80-yard shot at an elk. I mean, a follow-up shot, sure. Depending on animal behavior, it's the biggest, so many factors go into that. So but yeah, learning your equipment prior to showing up at camp is a big one. I see guys screwing broadheads on the day they get there, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, come on now. Got to do better than this.
But yeah, knowing your equipment. I told you yesterday I put on a new sight for my bow that's hopefully going to help. We'll see. Maybe I'm changing things in the fourth quarter that I don't need to be messing with, but
No,
Um,
you'll be good. Yeah, you'll be fine with that slider. We'll get you dialed up. You'll be. You said you want to be good out to 50. 50. If you should be able to get an elk in within that range. And then yeah, I like a slider just for the pinpoint accuracy. 3D. Stalking mule deer. Uh, but outside of that, on an elk hunt like you're going on, having those fixed pins or being knowing your equipment to shoot out to 50, or you'll be solid. So
cool, man. So what tips you got for us this week?
yeah, we'll dive in just kind of a summer build up. Kind of, I got some things right down here as far as getting ready for that hunting trip. You kind of touched on it, knowing your equipment first. That's where I start. Basically, that's just going to be shooting. Ideally, you've got your foundations, your shot process already built, to where you're not focusing on the process. Now you're focusing on what your bow's doing when you're shooting, trajectory of your arrows. That's number one. Your pin gaps. So setting up your 20, 30, 40, 50. Personally, I shoot a spot hog, fast eddy, double pin. So I know my top pin sits at 20, my third pin or my second pin sits at 35 yards, and then I can actually shoot where the vertical post and the bubble meet, and that's 50. That allows me to shoot out to 50 yards on the fly. But you have to practice that. You have to practice your holdovers, knowing how much that arrow is going to drop. So, like I was telling you earlier, from 35 to 50, I know essentially if it's 40, 42 yards, if I hold right on the spine of hold my second pin on the spine of the elk, it's going to drop 6 to 8 inches and it's going to fall right in the vitals. So just knowing your equipment, that's, yeah, start there. That's kind of the basics. Lead that into, or do you have any questions on that?
No, it makes a lot of sense. And um, pin gap shooting, I guess it stresses me out a little bit, but like when you're in the zone, you need to be able to have that figured out and not be guessing when it's time, right? If that elk, especially right, if you're calling elk in, which I've never done, but if they're coming in and they're coming in thinking you're there, you may not have all the time in the world that maybe a mule deer will give you, or time to set up a shot on an antelope with a rifle, um, kind of situation. So you need to be able to be confident, even if you don't have more likely than not, it's not going to be at the yardage that your pin is at, right?
Yeah, and that's big on setup, right? When you get set up, and especially for elk, a lot of guys coming from the east, we want to be hidden. That was something that I fell to. My first few elk hunts was like, oh yeah, set up behind that tree. It's like, no, set up on the front side of that tree. Elk and their eyesight, it's not as good as whitetail. You can get away with a lot of movement as long as it's slow and controlled. And then range in a couple shooting lanes, knowing those ranges so that when you do draw back, you're not worried about, okay, I called him into 20. He did see me, but he busted out and stopped at 35. Like, you don't have time. You're already at full draw. Knowing your pins, knowing your ranges, as in, again, pin gaps. So if it's 40, okay, I'm going to hold 2 to 3 inches high. And that's all depending on your equipment. And that's why it all goes back to knowing your equipment, arrow weights, everything. It's the same as ballistics in a rifle. Your drops. So every arrow is going to drop different. A heavier arrow is going to fall faster. It sounds simple, but a lot of guys just don't know that until they shoot it. So a way to practice that in your yard is to shoot your 35 pin and then walk back to 40, shoot the same spot, and then that's going to give you your drop. So if you shoot 35 pin at 40 and you get 2 inches, and then you shoot 45 using that 35 pin, it might be 5 inches. Then your next pin, again, going off mine, is like my bubble and the vertical post. I know that hits at 50. So then I can actually hold my bubble high if I know okay, it's 55 or 60. I can hold my bubble above. But yeah, just knowing that. And then that's with trajectory too, like how much arc is actually going into that. And then am I going to hit branches? Is there things that I'm not seeing? Super cool. Some of the new rangefinders actually have like compensation in that when you range it. If you put your arrow specs into the rangefinder, it'll actually tell you, hey, I'm going to hit this branch.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I haven't messed with them yet, but I've had a couple people telling me about it. I'm like, that's going to save a lot of guys. So
Who makes one of those?
I think it's the new Leopold that just came out. I'm not positive on the Sig. I don't know if they have it for the Archery yet or not. But
very cool.
Yeah. So that's knowing your equipment. Moving on to practicing hunting situations. So you've got your form down, you've got your knowing your equipment, knowing your drops. Then I work into hunting situations, and that can just be through practice. So long holds, draw your bow, hold for 45 seconds, re-engage, go through your shot process. It happens all the time. You'll hear stories, I held my bow for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Time slows down. It was probably about a minute. So
yeah,
that's something to work up to. Start with 30-second holds, then 45, then a minute. If you can hold your bow for a minute and then come back into that shot process and actually re-engage, go through your steps and execute a good shot, kind of leans into that. It's just hunting situations. So I'm sure you've in a tree stand, right? Like you hear that stick break and you look and that deer's at 30 yards. You're like, okay, I draw back. Boom, he's blown through 2 shooting lanes. Now he's in that 3rd lane and you're at full draw, but you can't move your feet. So you're having to twist at the torso and bend. It gets overlooked. We don't practice that in the backyard very often. I was just up at Mountain Archery Fest this past weekend, and Tyrell on the team, he was watching me kind of do some of those on the practice range. He's like, man, I never thought about that. I'm like, it's something I've coached before. I did it last summer where, draw at a 45-degree angle away from your target. Obviously make sure there's nothing, you're not going to shoot anything, but then keeping your feet stationary, twisting. As a right-handed shooter, when you draw to the left of the target and you start to turn, a lot of times this back arm is going to drop and you're just going to move that front shoulder. It's going to give you left to rights on your accuracy, and you have to really pay attention to keep that nice T position so that when you're releasing off the back of the string, it's firing off straight. It's not going to send your string left to right, because that will ultimately send you left to right down on your accuracy.
I would have never thought about practicing that at the range or at the target in your backyard.
Yeah. A couple other ones. There's kind of like your elk situation, right? You draw back. So my first elk, 2020, I drew 3 times. Originally, I drew back at 70 downhill. I had another bull bedded about 45 yards to my left, and I saw him at full draw. I made a quick cow call. He stood up and went up around back to check my wind. And when I looked back at the elk I was drawing on, they had already turned and were coming up the hill to do the same thing. I was like, oh, crap. So I let down because I had dialed to 70, right? We were talking about that. We were 50.
Yeah.
Typically try to dial using that sight. And I let down. I clicked again, 50. I drew back. They were already through that gap. I had to let down again, take 3 steps around a bush, click 50. I came to full draw, and right as the elk stepped out, again, you can get away with a lot of movement, but it's slow and controlled. You just can't spook them. And then drew back at 50. He cow called. He stopped, let go, and I had my first elk on the ground. But practicing that in the summer, right? So it's like, come to full draw. let down, come to full draw again. Now take your shot. Come to full draw, let down, walk a couple steps.
Mhm.
Again, just practicing. I always just tell people, I'm like, think of all the situations you've had happen.
Yeah, just do goofy shit.
Just do goofy shit.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, you don't think about it when you're just in the backyard, just slinging arrows.
Yeah.
Uh, you can practice. Western Hunt Fest does a good job of this with some of their shots in the competition where they'll have you like slow creep and crawl
Mm.
and like, actually practice that. Like you're on a stalk, right? It's antelope season. You're freaking belly crawling with your bow. Like, how does your equipment work with an arrow knocked? Like, are you crawling with it knocked? Are you just have to familiarize yourself with getting onto your D loop. Are you using a wrist release, a handheld, to the point where it just becomes so subconscious that you're not thinking about all those small things. You can watch the animal, watch their behavior, know when and how you're going to take that shot when the opportunity presents itself.
Is there a right answer to that? Do you crawl with it knocked or crawl with it in your hand or what?
It's going to be personal preference. An expandable, you always have that chance when you're crawling that it's going to open up, and then you're going to look down and go, crap, one blade's hanging out. Try that at home. Shoot with one blade open. See how it reacts, right? Compared to a fixed blade, there's pros and cons to both. I've killed elk with both a fixed blade and an expandable. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. We'll be here for like 2 hours. So, I don't think there's a right answer. It's just really practicing those hunting situations.
One thing that was new to me talking about hunting situations, I never shoot with my quiver on. And I started to because of this hunt, because of how this will be different than when I'm in a tree stand hunting whitetail, because I'll have my quiver next to me on the tree or hanging in my backpack, which is on a hook right here at my, left hand level where I can get them for a follow-up or a double or whatever. And shooting with the quiver on, especially with a full quiver, has it added significant torque. I could feel it in my wrist, and my shots were leaning, pulling, whatever, because of that difference. So that's been a different, because this is a totally different hunting scenario. So talking about hunting scenarios, that's totally new to me. And I'm glad somebody pointed that out to me. Or maybe I'm just and figured that out. But
do
I was like,
do you run a sidebar?
Yeah.
Or a stabilizer?
Yeah.
I can notice that. I shoot year round with my quiver on. I have since I was planning to come out west the first year. And now even in a tree stand, I don't even take my quiver off. I just shoot with it on. It's just habit. I have my sidebar set up so that it levels that out, because what's happening essentially is you're just canting.
Right.
You're going to fight that because the weight's off. That's a good point, because I see it all the time at 3D shoots, everything. Guys are that's a cool thing with Brandon. Brandon's competition at Mount Archery Fest, he requires a quiver and 3 arrows. And just last weekend at Antelope Butte, he was going over the rules. A guy came running up, was like, "Do you sell quivers like to the booth?" And I was like, if you have a tight spot, you can take mine.
Yeah.
So he borrowed my quiver for the competition, and it's just something. It gets overlooked, guys, and then they throw it on, and they're like, "Why am I doing shooting to the right, shooting to the left?" So no, that's a good point. But that's that. And then third and lastly, which we do with the Mountain Fitness Challenge, I've done in the past with some other coaching stuff, is that high heart rate, shooting with a high heart rate. There's something to be said about you'll fall to your level of preparedness. So if you've never shot with fatigue, or I'm a big proponent to that of, you have to know how you're going to react in those situations. So one of the drills I do is like running the quiver. So I've got 5 arrows in my quiver, set my target up. I'll run a quarter mile, just a light jog, come back, right? That's just bringing my heart rate up, trying to simulate a hunting situation again of, hiking up the mountain. You see that elk at 800 yards and you only have 30 minutes of daylight. It's like, I got to bust ass over there. Your heart rate's going to be up. Like, you're not going to be able to control that. Whitetail hunting, that adrenaline dump, buck fever. If you can't, dude, 7-8 years, I shit the bed every time. Like, I mean, my heart would just come pumping out of my chest and I couldn't hold it together until I started training, adding those hunting situations, elevated heart rate. And like, then I got in those situations and I was able to regulate it. Once the arrow is released, yeah, I'm losing my mind. Like, I've got videos of me just shaking and freaking out. I'm just like, this is what it's all about. If this goes away, I'm going to quit hunting. I know everybody says that, but so yeah, doing some other drills to just simulate that. It can just be working out, putting in, shooting a rep in between working out, between sets, whatever it is, learning, okay, it's day 4 of an elk hunt. You're 22 miles in on the week and your shoulders are smoked because you've been carrying around a 60-pound pack for the last 4 days. Like, now all of a sudden there's an elk at 20 yards. Like, can you hold the bow for 45 seconds and your shoulders, like, are they fatigued? Are you strong enough? So, yeah, that's kind of, then you're rolling right into season. Hopefully you're prepared. And,
that's right.
Any questions on that stuff? Like,
no, that's good. I like that a lot. That's going to become part of my workout routine here moving forward. It's, we say it all the time, but take your preparedness seriously, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing. Yeah. If you don't train, how do you expect to perform when the time comes? So it's the biggest thing I can leave that on.
Yeah. 100%, man. I appreciate it, dude. Good luck to everybody who drew archery tags or is bow hunting at all. I know it's hot as hell here in Georgia during bow season. I usually go out in Crocs if I go out at all. I hate just sitting in a stand and sweating, but good luck to everybody.
Yeah, best of luck. I know first year out here, opening day when I killed that bull was 93 degrees. So,
oh my God.
It can be hot. And then 4 days later, I think we had 8 inches of snow overnight. So,
of course.
Yeah, I'm excited, ready for season. I'm excited for everybody that did draw tags. I'll be cheering you on from the sideline right now. I'll be guiding, wishing I was out there. So
nice, man. Kiefer, where can folks reach out to you if they have archery questions?
Best place is just going to be Instagram. The handle is just Kiefer Rogers, and it's Keifer Rogers. Just reach out to me on that. I'll do my best to get back to you. Service is a little iffy out here at the cabin, so between that and traveling on the road. But yeah, just Instagram's the number one, and then I'll probably just shoot you my number and you can give me a call or text. So
awesome, man. Appreciate it. I'll be bugging you for some archery tips. And listeners, as always, we appreciate the hell out of you guys. We'll talk to you next week.